Sure, I'll get set here. And welcome. It's 1:07 on a Monday afternoon. Thank you. Again, we had a little technical hiccup here with my computer. I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but here we are. So welcome, Eric Graham. And the two of us today are going to talk a little bit about when working with attorneys. And back when I started in the business many years ago, anytime the word attorney came up, everybody got a little bit nervous because attorneys had a bit of a reputation for being deal killers, for making things really complicated, and ultimately frustrating both agents and their clients. And nevertheless, we have that paragraph in our purchase agreement that says the buyer has been advised to seek legal advice. In your experience, Eric, is that a paragraph that agents generally cover clearly and definitively when they present the purchase agreement for a buyer's signature?
Well, I don't think we always do that, or we don't put enough emphasis on that language. If they want a deal killer, they just call me, and I can sure complicate things just like the rest of them.
Pretty much.
I mean, fair enough, right? Touche.
Yeah.
But no, it's. I think in this litigious state that we continue to be in, and the idea that when we draft language that tends to be ambiguous or vague or without consequence or without a deadline, it tends to now muddy the waters. And now it all of a sudden a seller and buyer will be in a state of, well, we don't know how to move forward because both parties think they're always right. And no party wants to ever compromise. And this is why we have to hire an attorney for compromising.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that paragraph, because I think we would agree that most agents, very, very few agents actually, are talking about that paragraph saying, you know, the buyer has hereby been advised that they can seek legal counsel. How many times do agents, do you think, actually verbalize that to their buyers and say, oh, by the way, now that we've got the price written out and we've got the terms and we've asked for certain things to be left at the property, and here's the closing date, and by the way, you really should contact your attorney and have a conversation. How often, percentage-wise, do you think that happens?
Not in Michigan.
Maybe 1/2 of 1% of the time.
Yeah, we more so in commercial real estate, but not residential.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Commercial is pretty consistent, that we always have the umbrella clause. This is all subject to an attorney's review and approval, but not with.
And again, we rarely will have an attorney drafted, because you have to understand, we have associations that have drafted boilerplate purchase agreements where it's pretty cut and dry. We're trained and we learn how to practice real estate a certain way based on your association's purchase agreements. Rarely do we step in something where we go, well, geez, why do we need an attorney? Well, you need an attorney because you probably drafted something that led to ambiguity and caused an issue.
Ambiguity, huh? Well, let's
uncertainty.
Yes. So what's the number one reason for real estate lawsuits in Michigan? For sale by owner transactions and blanks in contracts. Because if you leave blanks in contracts, you have ambiguity or uncertainty in the in what has been agreed to. And so the reason that for sale by owner transactions wind up in court so frequently, disproportionately frequently, I might add, to transactions with real estate agents, is because you have two parties very often. Neither one of them knows how to communicate and to write it out, what both parties are agreeing to. Would you agree?
Oh, definitely.
Okay, so writing it out and removing the ambiguity, we've talked about this before. What are some of the elements that have to be in phrases, clauses, negotiations? We have to have what's going to happen and what's going to happen if that doesn't happen, right?
Yeah. And a deadline.
Consequences and
Yeah.
and a deadline. So those three elements, what did we agree to? What happens if we don't agree to it? And what happens if it doesn't happen on time, right?
Correct.
So when we get into these elements, that's where attorneys tend to be really good and can be very helpful if we bring them in at a point that it's early enough for them to help. Either that, or they're going to be having our clients are going to have to go out and hire them and pay them a bunch of money to fight their point of view, whatever it might be, in the courts, right?
Yeah, and it's very costly. It ends up typically blowing up a deal, or it puts that home in jeopardy where maybe a Liz Pendens gets slapped on it and no one's going to be doing anything on it. It's a waste of resources and time and effort for both sellers and buyers, listing agents and buyers agents, when we have unclear written statements without consequences or deadlines.
So Eric, help me understand, if I'm going to sit down with my client, as I'm a buyer's agent, I'm going to sit down with my client, I've written an offer, and now I'm going to say to them, oh, by the way, now that I've written it up, although I'm a real estate professional and I've had some pretty good experience over the years, and if there's anything complex whatsoever, unusual, is it a good idea for me to say to this client, by the way, maybe we should include in here language that says this purchase agreement is subject to my attorney, the buyer's attorney's review and approval. Should I, and maybe
review and approval on by when?
By when? Exactly. You beat me to it, but yes, by when? When is that review and approval going to happen? What happens if you haven't approved it by that date? If it hasn't been approved by that date, is the buyer moving forward or is the deal dead? So these are little things that we have to put in there even before we hand off the purchase agreement to the attorney, right?
And here's the problem though, when we write such language as this, is that the seller's going to be like, well, no, I'm going to take an easier offer. And we typically end up accepting offers that have less resistance or less reviews of others involved in a transaction. It's one of these where it's very challenging. This is why these associations have created such documents to allow agents to easily follow the boilerplate language. It was never intended for us to be able to have so many common clauses where we muddy the waters. But so we have to be very careful when you're writing outside of the boilerplate language that's already there, what your intentions are, what the consequences are, when is the deadline for those, and what happens even after the deadline isn't met.
Right.
Does the agreement automatically terminate? And then will both parties agree to that language? Again, don't be surprised you get a counteroffer saying, no, I want that language removed.
Yeah. And I think that's an excellent point. If you're in a seller's market, as we have been for many years, and we see some more balance now, but we're still, I think, in a seller's market to a large degree. But a seller, if he gets 2 or 3 offers, is going to look at them and go, wait a minute, this one isn't subject to an attorney's review. It may be subject to an attorney's lawsuit later, but it's not subject to their review beforehand, which is kind of the dichotomy here. So how do we work better? How can we help agents work more effectively, more cooperatively with lawyers out there now?
Well, first of all, it's very important when we are reviewing our purchase agreements that we actually educate the public. The public needs to know that they have a right to seek the advice of attorney at any time. If they start getting down a path where they're really uncertain about what their options are, the agent should automatically be saying, hey, look, here's my opinion. I'm not an attorney, but you always have the right to talk to an attorney. Don't feel bad that you want to go get some advice from your attorney.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think agents, we prop ourselves up so high that yes, we are supposed to be the professionals, but maybe it's an ego buster if all of a sudden our clients want to talk to an attorney. specific to real estate. Maybe it might bruise our ego, but
Right.
don't let it bruise your ego. We're here to help them, not hinder them from getting the most expert advice that they can get.
Yeah. And as you and I, on a daily basis, have to really reiterate the words, we are not attorneys. We as deal doctors, as broker support team, as brokers, we're not attorneys. We have a lot of experience and we may be able to help people, but the agents themselves can recognize that they are not attorneys. They are professionals, but when it comes to things, as you say, that is out of the norm, maybe more complex than normal, it's really a good idea for the agent to encourage the client to reach out to an attorney and get their perspective, look at the options, look at the considerations. We find this especially with owner financing, like land contracts. Land contracts can be complex. And so it's really a good idea if a seller is considering accepting a land contract that they talk with their attorney about, you know, some of the loopholes or some of the, maybe a better option out there, some of the tax consequences and that sort of thing. What are some other areas that an agent might encourage an attorney to get involved?
Yeah, I was just going to bring up this great word, interpretation. Interpretation is when an professional such as ourselves or an agent, we look at this purchase agreement and we think, hey, I think that this is what this portion of this written common clause is stating. The courts may see it differently. So I think agents, we always need to be very cautious about interpreting common clauses that truly aren't what they say, or they're ambiguous. We always want to pick up the phone, maybe clarify with the other side what it is that you're truly trying to negotiate. And if so, redraft an addendum so that everyone understands what both parties are agreeing to. But interpretation is agents need to be very careful that, especially when a deal is getting heated and someone says, well, no, this is how I interpret it. And the other says, no, this is what we're saying. Well, before everyone starts throwing down their lawyer card, why don't you both have, you know, a serious conversation of, well, this was how we felt it was. I understand this is how you feel it was. Now, how do we come to an agreement?
Yeah.
Or is this truly a bypass where we can't come to an agreement and both sides need to part still with, you know, not being so upset with one another?
Well, I think a really good example of that was the escalation clause interpretations that we experienced in the last couple of years, where some attorneys' interpretation is that you can only bump an escalation clause once from the original price, whereas other attorneys would say, well, you can ratchet it up the ladder, you know, one escalation clause forcing the other one up higher and higher until they reach their cap. Well, those are two very different interpretations. They can make a difference of thousands of dollars to the seller and buyer. So we have gotten the interpretation from our attorney, we've heard others from different attorneys. So in a situation like that, Eric, what do we do how do we prevent the lawsuit? How do we prevent it from becoming heated and antagonistic when the offer is written, so as to avoid that problem in the future?
Well, I would tell someone, just counter them with an offer. Make it cut and dry. Here's our counter offer price. You want it or not? That's one solution.
That's probably, in my opinion, the most clear solution. It is a counter offer. Yeah, the buyer can walk away. Okay, let them. They know there's another offer waiting in the wings. So is the seller putting themselves at risk? No. But again, let's go back to this issue of lawyers and let's talk about environmental issues just for a second. I find it particularly important when we get involved in commercial property or even residential property that may have environmental issues with it, that we get attorneys involved. Let's say, for example, there's friable asbestos on the on the old octopus furnace down the basement that's still chugging away, but probably not for long. But we find this down the basement. What do? Do we just say, well, let's remove it? Or do we get some language in there with the help of an attorney that protects our sellers and our buyers?
Yeah, it again, we can only provide guidance, but it's going to truly be up to the public. What does your client want you to do? I mean, I look at this and say, yes, it would be ideal that we would draft an addendum saying, hey, look, that this purchase agreement is going to be now contingent upon an environmental consultant being retained to ensure that this furnace is looked at and a report is provided to the buyer, and the buyer needs to accept the findings. If the buyer is unable to accept the findings, the buyer has a right to terminate the purchase agreement. This action will be performed on or before a blank date.
So we're really talking about disclosure of a
Disclosure is a big one,
and informed consent. As long as they know, and we recommend that you get it in writing, by the way, that they understand that these things have been disclosed to them, whatever they might be, and they say, yeah, we're going to move forward, whether it's to waive a survey, to not have environmental inspections performed, like lead-based paint. We see that a lot. All of these things are, the really important thing here is to make sure that you disclose these things, you disclose the options to your client, and then let them make the choice and get their decision in writing.
Yeah, and that's why that pre-offer agreement that we have with 5-Star spells out a lot of the meat and potatoes within a purchase agreement. That, hey, here's the pre-offer. Client, I need you to sign this, because inside the purchase agreement, you are stating that you're agreeing that you're going to waive your survey. You are agreeing that you're going to accept the home in its as is condition. You're agreeing that you're not going to do a walkthrough. So we do have within 5-Star documents and .loop a pre-offer. It's almost like a pre-offer disclosure for the purchase agreement that we can fill out. It just reassures that, one, the agent did review the major components within a purchase agreement, and that the client can't say, well, you never told me about that. Well, I'm sorry, client, you just initialed that you said that you've read this.
Yeah.
Now, if you decided not to read it, that's on you, but here it is that you said that you've understood and you've agreed that you're not going to have a survey. But it's one of these where anytime a client says, I don't want that, I don't need that, you better have some type of additional documentation, in my opinion, saying, hey, look, I've encouraged you to get a survey, but you have decided not to. Even if it's a simple Word document that you create that says acknowledgement.
Right.
Eric Graham has recommended that you obtain a survey for this property. Buyer has declined. Very simple. Have them sign it. It's just going to protect you, because, in 2 years down the road, when they find out that, wow, they didn't really own as much of the lake property that they thought because they didn't get a survey, and now they want to sue you, guess what? Well, you have some type of acknowledgement saying, I requested you to get a survey. You didn't want one. So,
Eric, what do you think would be a good advice for agents, to give agents who are encountering an attorney on a transaction? How do we live peacefully with an attorney that we may perceive is going to kill the deal, or is going to make the deal so complex that both parties are frustrated?
Well, I think for me personally, the biggest thing that an agent can do is pick up the phone and have a conversation with the attorney. Hi, I'm Eric Graham. I'm a real estate agent. I'm representing Mr. Smith. Just wanted to let you know that something has come up and we need your guidance. Would you be willing to help? First of all, you're asking. You're not telling an attorney what to do. We're coming with humbleness just to say, hey, look, we need your help. Would you mind looking at this?
Yeah.
Now, if they're already an attorney of that client, some of them might look at it real quick and say, hey, look, here's our recommendation. and then they'll bill the client behind the scenes because they're not going to do anything for free. Understand that.
And
Number two,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. As I say, number two, now they know that you're part of the plan. They will consult with their client, and then your client will also consult with you. Or they may ask your client, hey, is it okay if I bring Eric into the mix as well? Because that attorney may want to talk with me because I'm in the trenches. I've already done everything. That attorney may have very specific questions about the current situation to help him understand what he needs to write now.
Exactly.
So
Communication
we
is the
come
key.
to help, not to be a burden.
Yeah. Communication
attorney.
is so important, and to not be too nervous about working with an attorney that you can't communicate in layman's language what the two parties are trying to accomplish, and let them help you guide the language and create the language that needs to be there to protect your client. And I
Yeah,
would
we don't need to look at the attorney as someone who's in the way. You know, one, you build a great rapport with them. You might need them in the future. Maybe you end up bringing other clients to that person.
Yeah.
Maybe you hit it off and you end up meeting a new friend as an attorney. So be there. I mean, just be straightforward. Don't get nervous when you're talking with an attorney who's trying to help your client.
Yeah.
And on the opposite side is, if you do get a call from an attorney who's threatening to sue, don't say a darn thing. Just say, well, thank you very much, but you know what? Since that you've lawyered up now, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to disengage with this conversation with you. If you need anything further, you'll have to, file a lawsuit against 5-Star and myself then. I mean, that's
a couple of things. First of all, before we wind up here, if y'all have any questions out there, please post them in the thread, and we'll try to get back to them throughout the day. But yes, communication is key. Don't be nervous about the working with an attorney. If you want to bring Eric or me or broker support into the conversation with an attorney, we can help guide that conversation. We can help facilitate that conversation. And yes, as Eric says, this is really, really important. If you get notified that an attorney is involved, if you hear from an attorney, we ask that you defer that and send that back to us, your broker support team, Eric and me, and we will deal with that within our framework. We
don't engage the attorney.
Yeah. So anyway,
in my non-attorney opinion, don't engage the attorney.
We say that non-attorney opinion line quite a bit. Hey, Eric, thanks for joining. And
yes, thank you,
all
Don.
of you who joined, thank you. And we will see you next week.
Take care.
Have a good one.